Hey guys, it's Guy Halbert. I'm here on the Ducks Unlimited podcast. Very thankful to be here. And today we're talking about duck hunting, duck management, land management. Stay tuned to learn more.
Can we do a mic check, please?
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
I'm your host, Katie Burke.
I'm your host, Dr. Jerad Henson. And I'm your host, Matt Harrison.
Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. The DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. Whether you're winding down with your best friend or celebrating with your favorite crew, Bird Dog brings award-winning flavor to every moment. Enjoy responsibly.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harrison, and today we have with us on the left, also co-host of the Ducks Unlimited podcast, Dr. Jerad Henson, have Mr. Guy Halbert with us, and also special guest, and also my brother, Michael Harrison. Fellas, how we doing?
We're doing great, man.
Great, man.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Hey, I'm excited.
We are super excited about this podcast episode because we get to talk ducks and land and ducks and land. And I am so excited because that is something us four guys like a lot and like to talk about a lot. So this will be an episode that we're just going to dive in, talk a little bit about duck habitat, the do's and don'ts, and also just kind of the everyday of a land manager. So we want to start off with Mr. Guy Halbert here. Going to have Guy dive into a little bit about what he does and also his background as a land manager.
Sure, yeah. So I'm originally from small town Brinkley, Arkansas, which is in between here and Little Rock, and it's a little delta town, and it's surrounded what I would say is probably some of the best public area hunting grounds in probably the whole state of Arkansas: Cache River, White River, Dagmar. And so I kind of cut my teeth hunting there as a kid.
Yeah,
and I've been obsessed with this since I was a baby. Deer hunting, duck hunting, and I knew when I was young that I had to figure out a way to do this for a living, not land management in general, just be in the outdoor industry, do something, because that's all I was good at. When I was a kid, you can ask my mom, I would just draw pictures of deers and ducks, and that's just all I did. But so fast forward, me and my mother moved to Lone Oak, Arkansas, which is just right up 40 going towards Little Rock, when I was 12 or 13, and ended up finishing school there and graduating and chase the baseball dream, which y'all can.
We have two former college teammate baseball players here. Michael and Guy played college baseball together.
We did, and obviously continued to hunt. Mm-hmm. That's just what I was crazy about, even in college. So my freshman year of college, this is kind of how I got started with what I do. It's kind of a crazy story because, not crazy, but it's kind of like a unique story, and just God's will of how he did this for me. So I didn't deserve it. I still don't, but how he put me where he did is just an amazing story. But so in 2014, my sister was dating a guy that was a land manager, caretaker, whatever you want to call us. And he was taking care of an unbelievable property. I'm talking
Sweet.
I remember, so they invited me to come hunting, and I was like, they told me about it and everything, and I knew there were some really nice duck clubs in Arkansas, like some really superior, just nice. And I remember going through the gate and putting a code in and just opening it up, and you're
opens up to heaven.
It's like walking into here. It's just like awesome, It's anyway. So I go through the front gate, and I'm like, wow, this is something
Sweet.
here. We get to go hunting. We have a good shoot, and we kind of kick it off, and ended up being pretty good friends, and I get to help them quite a bit that year. Mm-hmm. This was when I was a freshman in college, and just trying to learn the ropes and how to do stuff, and not necessarily, land management, because I wasn't there in the summers, but how the winters worked there, and kind of what their roles were and stuff like that. And this was on the private side. This was not an outfitter.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I met him, and then he had a coworker that was closer to my age, and we really kicked it off. And we would, duck hunt in the bottoms together all the time, and I'd help them. And okay, so we'll fast forward, we go to UAM, and when I went to UAM, that farm kind of disposed. They ended up selling that property.
Oh, wow.
And those two guys they got displaced, and they had to relocate. And moving forward, so we graduate UAM. I did, and somehow. Anyways, just a general degree. And I was trying to find a job when I got out of college, and I ended up just going to work on a farm for a buddy. And so that's kind of where I get my farming background from. And I farmed in the summers when I was a kid too, in the summer work. It's just, I had to work. So that's what I did. And so I'm farming for my buddy, and the winter comes around. Well, I get a guide job with my cousin, which is actually not far from here. It's just outside of West Memphis going towards Little Rock. And it's a pretty cool place. And I really learned the guide aspect up on the outfitting business side and how all that works. And it's a grind, man. Like it was a lot of fun, but I was really tired. But I learned, some really good parts of all that. Well, I did that. And this whole time, I did that for 2 years. And so this whole time, I'm looking for, a big boy job, trying to figure out what I want to do. I knew I wanted to be in the outdoor business or something, but it's hard you got to know somebody, essentially. And playing back to Lord's will, well, he let me network enough to know somebody. So I finally get a big boy job. I go to work for the UP, Union Pacific Railroad, and it was a great gig. And for a good old boy from the Delta, it was good money and it was great. Well, if you know anything about railroad, they're union. Mm-hmm. So when you're union, I'm sorry, this is a long story, but anyway, we're going to dive into it. When you're union, if you're the lowest man on the totem pole, they're going to lay you off.
You're the first one to go.
And I was the first one to go. And so I went back to farming and making a quarter what I was making, had a newborn at home. It was really tough on me and my wife, and had a newborn. And I just kept praying and praying. I was like, just, help me find something that I would love to do, because I don't love. I liked farming, but if you're not doing it for yourself, farmhand is hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard on you. It's hard on your family. And I was still trying to find something to do in the outdoor industry. Well, this was in September. I was laid off in September. October, like first week of October, I get a phone call, and it's the coworker at the really nice place that I was helping. And he's like, "Hey man, you're not gonna believe this, but I just took a job in Carlisle, which is the next town over, 5 minutes from my house."
Wow.
He said, I just took a job. I can't tell you anything about it yet until I know more, but I would really like some help, because it's a big place. Yeah. And I would love some help. And I said, absolutely. Sign me up. I'll start now. Yeah. But no,
that's awesome.
It progressed. And November 1st, I helped my buddy finish harvest, which was good of me, because he needed my help. I helped him finish harvest. And November 1st, I was hired on at this place. And that's where I kind of cut my teeth on the actual summer stuff. And, he's a biologist too, the guy I worked with. And so he taught me a lot of just core values on how to do stuff. And, I taught myself a lot of stuff I know differently, from what he did. And just, you kind of got to be your own guy when you do what I do. You just got to learn what works, what don't work, because every property is different, and so that's kind of how it started. And that place ended up getting sold too. And I just kind of easily transitioned out of that and networked real good, and met my guys now that I work for. And it's a true blessing.
Awesome. So what year is this for you?
Which one?
As in, like, how many years have you been doing?
This will be my 8th year.
8th year.
Yeah.
Wow. And now Michael as well also was a land manager for 5 years. Now he has a different occupation. But Michael, tell us a little bit about how you kind of got your start as well as a land manager.
So I kind of fell into mine. We're originally from a big town in McGee, Mississippi. It's got like 2,300 people. So we've always just heard Arkansas duck hunting. You know how it is. Well, anyway, thank the Lord, me and Matt both, and Guy. Did you play any ball anywhere or anything?
I did.
You did?
I did, and actually, so I didn't end up playing college, but I went to Arkansas Tech to play baseball.
Did
wow.
you? Okay.
I did.
Small.
I went
to
I went to CAC
Really?
high school. Yeah, and played ball there.
Okay.
We won state my senior year.
Wow.
So, and I had a really good year.
Yeah.
So yes, I have a passion for baseball as well.
Look, we got 4 ball players.
But I am a little bit older than y'all, so for sure.
But anyway, so I ended up playing some JUCO ball in Mississippi. Well, going into it, I didn't have any offers out of high school or anything. Ended up going on tryout, got a scholarship, ended up playing ball. Well, as my sophomore year came around, I ended up getting some offers, and then there was about 8 on the table. Well, so I started looking at the locations of these places because at this time, me and Matthew, or we still are, but ate up with duck hunting. But you're from Central/South Mississippi. You're going to burn some wood ducks, but that's about it. So anyway, so I ended up talking to a couple of coaches. Well, I finally got an offer from UAM, Arkansas Monticello. Well, so I called the coach up and we're talking. He's like, I'd love for you to come out here and look and hang out and talk and look at the campus. And I said, how far are y'all from Biomeda? And he said, we're about an hour and 15 minutes. He said, do you duck hunt? I said, yes, sir. He said, this is the place for you. So needless to say, 2 weeks later, I ended up going on a visit. I absolutely loved it. So there's Cutoff Creek right next to it, which is like 14 miles. Then you got Kate Adams, which is an hour. You got the White River, hour and 40. Felsenthal, 45. So, I mean, it was literally like a duck hunting mecca. It was absolutely unbelievable. So anyway, so I ended up doing that. Well, there was a property. It's a private equity company owns this property that I ended up working at. Well, I honestly fell into it. I was going to school at UAM, and the owner of this property knew my coach. So he texts and he said, "Look, we're changing lodges. We just recently built a lodge, so we're changing, and we need help moving stuff. Would any of your baseball players be willing to help?" So I text back. I said, "Yeah, let me know. I'll be glad to help," with intentions of hopefully something happening later down the road. But it actually did. So I helped them move this lodge for about 3 weeks, and then it ended up, "Hey, do you want to help bush hog on after class and all kinds of stuff?" What turned into that? Then it turned into, "Hey, do you want to help plant?" And then it turned into that. And then duck season rolled around, and it was my first time ever hunting private property. And it was kind of one of those surreal moments where I've been around the lodge whenever we were cleaning, bush hogging, prepping, but I've never seen it in operation. So, man, we've been hunting public land for 3 weeks up until season. I get that phone call, "Hey, you wanna come hunt one morning?" And I was like, I could not believe it. I was just in shock. I said, "Yeah, what time?"
You tell me I ain't got to work up at 2:30.
So they were like, "Be here at this time." Well, man, we ended up going and hunting the Seven Devils WMA, the north end of it, which is the Seven Devils Bottoms, they still call it, man. And it was one of those flight days where Gadwall it was just unbelievable. Well, turned into that, and then so that was my junior year, so I had another year, and I did that off and on with them. Well, I ended up graduating, and so I went home. I've got a construction background. That's what my dad did and all that. So anyway, so I went back home, and I really didn't know 100% what I was going to do, but I wanted to be in the land management / guiding because I'd had a taste of it. You know what I mean? And that I knew right then that's literally what I wanted to do. Well, anyway, I went home about a month, and the owner of this property called me and was like, "Hey," he said, "We just found out that our caretaker's turning his 2 weeks notice." And he's like, "We'd like to have somebody that's been around the place and kind of has known it for 2 years." And I was just in shock. And I'm pretty sure I said yeah without even knowing what I was going to make. So like,
yeah. And that's what, if you love it as much as we do, it doesn't matter.
And so
to an extent.
I ended up doing it for 5 years. And family, I ended up getting married, and we wanted to have kids and all that. So we kind of gravitated back home, which was back to Mississippi, 4 miles. But anyway, so I did that for right at 5 years, and man, I loved it. I loved every aspect of it. And I mean, and it's still in my heart right now. You know what I mean?
Well, what I think is really cool, one thing I think that both of y'all will really relate to is the fact that if you're a diehard duck hunter, like especially growing up in Arkansas and hunting timber, things like that, you love to call ducks, you love to work ducks.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to take a tractor and put it in a field and do the same thing,
yes,
right?
Yes,
you are influencing ducks.
You are
making them come to a certain spot, and you feel like you have influence that. That's
Yeah.
a big feeling. That's something that
Yeah, that's a
really
good
makes
point.
you go.
I tell most of the people that I talk to about this is like the winter is the easy part. The hunting is the easy
100%.
part. What really gets me going is the whole summer aspect and just
Yeah.
making it all come together for the winter time. Planting whatever
Yeah.
you may do, TSI work, whatever. So
Yeah, and that's what we're diving into now is the land aspect and managing aspect and talking habitat and ducks. So this time of year, we're about to be in the dog days of summer here really soon. It's starting to really warm up here, especially in the south. What is kind of your day-to-day basis right now look like? We're going to kind of talk about each season, just a little bit overview, but like right now during this time of year, what are you doing?
yeah, so I'll just give you an example of what I did last week. So right now we're kind of fighting the
Getting rid of
spring,
water.
Yeah, the spring
Fighting
rains.
the water.
And so, like last week, right now most of them, I do a lot of moist soil management. So, a lot of my moist soil is still drawing down, and we just got a bunch of rain and stuff. But I got some higher ground. Like I manage for deer too, and we do big dove hunts and stuff like that. So last week, I'm prepping my dove field, planting my dove field, stuff like that. And I do some early crops. I have some stuff that drains really good, and that, where we're at on top, in the prairie where we're at, we drain a little bit better than say on the other side of the White River. But so right now, I'm kind of getting ready to do some of my early plantings. So
What are you planting?
rice. I do a lot of rice, and I do a lot of moist soil, but I do a lot of, you got to have hot crops too in there somewhere. I call them hot crops, high carbohydrate crops and stuff. And so I'm planting rice and corn. If we, I'm trying to get everything prepped for that this time of year.
Yeah.
And, coming out of duck season, I try to get everything cleaned up. And then this time of year, it's like you can't really get going good because you're going to get a rain or something like that. But, just trying to get everything ready to go with maintenance wise and just, trying to get ready to plant. So going to planting season.
Yeah, no doubt. So talking a little bit about summer, you hit on right before we got on this topic of the hunting season, wintering season is the easiest, right? That is typically you're getting to hunt, you're getting to enjoy and benefit off what Jerad was just talking about, you spending a lot of time out there working, whether it's a tractor, whether it's cleaning, brushing blinds, whatever it is, all the aspects of it. But what would you say time of year wise is the hardest? Would you say it's summer? Would you say it's fall right before season? Because you got to make sure everything's lined up whenever you're, getting ready to open up the season. What would you say as a land manager? And Michael, you can chime in too.
About a month and a half before season.
When it's 105 and you have to spray all the perennial smartweed to kill them off. That's pretty tough. And you're driving a duck boat in one hand and spraying with your right hand. That's
Fighting on cottonmouths and
Feeding the mosquitoes,
man,
on the horseflies down there.
It's however
It
you
is
perceive it.
Yeah.
To me, there's some days that get hard and you're like, man, it's hard to get motivated to get going to do it because you're like, it's 105 and the mosquitoes are as big as dogs. There's stuff like that. That's
85% humidity.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
On top of it. Yeah.
Everybody, I'm not picking on anybody, but everybody's like, man, you just plant food plots, and that's what people think you do. And it's
Not to do it well.
It's not it's the farthest thing from the truth.
All you gotta do is flood it.
Yeah, some guys are
Turn
like,
the
what
pumps
all
on."
you do? I'm like, I could write you a list as long as this table and still keep writing. I could write on them, it's always something to do. But I would say the hardest part is just or the summertime is just the summertime would probably be like when it's hot and it's hard to get motivated and you got a list this long to do. So to me,
And you got to work around Mother Nature.
absolutely,
That's the thing.
absolutely,
You can't control that schedule.
absolutely,
Right. You can kind of get ready, like you were saying, but ultimately you have to be ready to do things when you can do them.
That's a good point. I think I'm not trying to talk too much, but
No.
in my, Michael too, what he did, and you get certain windows that you have to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And it might be wet, and then you got a 90-degree day coming with 15-mile-an-hour winds, and you're going to dry up that afternoon. Well, like say for planting, say I'm going to go in and plant millet or whatever I'm going to do, or rice or whatever. You got to chase that moisture in that ground too, especially when you get later in the summer. Especially like planting millet and stuff. Millet's kind of a later crop. Most guys do that in late July, August. That that's why I don't bet on millet that much, because I do if I have to, but I like to do everything kind of early because
you can miss that window.
if you miss that window, you're too late, or it's too dry before. There's so many variables in that. So.
Well, a lot of time millet's that was your second chance, anyways, right?
Absolutely,
first crop failed,
absolutely,
and so now you're trying to make something out of it, or your moist soil failed, right?
Yeah,
and then you're like, well, I can throw a disc in it and hit it with some Jap millet and go.
Absolutely, yeah.
And pray the armyworms don't smoke that.
That's exactly. Yeah. Oh my goodness! Don't get me started. Hey, I'll tell you, this year I've been doing it for 7 years full time, and this year was the worst armyworms I've ever seen.
Really?
Yep.
Really? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did it wipe out a lot?
Man, I was lucky. I do a lot of moist soil, like I told you, but I had to spray. I do a lot of mixtures in my units, so I'll take one side of it, because we stage all our water. Everything we have, I got good drainage, and most of everything we have. Y'all seen Ethel. You can't drain Ethel, but
Ethel is the drain.
Yeah, it is the drain, and that's why it's good though. It's, natural drainage. But I'll put some strip hot crops in some of my moist soil so I can mow. You can't manipulate, obviously.
Yeah.
And so my millet, like I'll say I do 2 strips of rice, and then I'll leave some moist soil to mow. So essentially. Lost my train of thought, but
yeah, no,
yeah,
I see what you're saying. Talking about the window, and if you miss it, like Jerad said, Mother Nature, like you've got to work around Mother Nature. And tying into that is, a lot of people that see you with the job you have, or see you as a land manager at a place like this, are always like, man, it must be nice to have something like that, but they don't see, all the work that goes into it, but then also the things that you have to miss out on because of those windows. Like, you know what I mean? Realizing 100%. That you have to be out there. Somebody may invite you to something, you're like, man, I literally can't. I can't be there. I've got to make sure I'm planting, or I'm, disc, whatever it is that you're doing, because if I don't get it in this week, who knows what, because Mother Nature. So, and that's one thing that a lot of people don't see is the day-to-day challenges that you face too as a land manager. It's not just, a month before duck season, we're going to throw some, seed out and it's going to just sprout up and we're going to shoot ducks over it. It don't work like that. And a lot of people may not see that aspect.
YouTube makes it look like that. You just right out there with a four-wheeler spreader and you get 150 bushel rice.
Yeah, they don't see you out there the month before digging through a drain tile or a culvert to pull a beaver dam out, so that you can actually get water to flow.
And a big old cottonmouth just sitting there.
Slingshot and cottonmouth.
Yeah.
literally. I mean, it's
so.
Yeah. But that's awesome. So, what are some of we did talk about the winters, but what are some of more challenges that you might face as a land manager? We talked a little bit about rain, because that plays into the Mother Nature too. But when you're managing something like that, like how much help do you have to have? Like if you don't have the help that you need, I know that's a challenge. So what are just some of the challenges that you have faced or will face again as a land manager?
Yeah. So personally, one of my biggest challenges is, our property is just big enough where I could use another set of hands, but it, efficiently, it'd be great, but, financially to my boss, it probably doesn't make much sense, because you don't have to, it's hard to say that, but, logistics to me is the biggest thing. And I relate that back to having help, but logistics of stuff. So all my stuff's broke up. I got 500 acres at the home place. I got another 500 at, we call it Refuge Farm. I've got another 500 at Ethel. Just getting around those places. Say I got to go I'm going to go plant rice in my 80 unit, and I got to work it. I've got to plant it. I've got to fertilize it. It's a lot of steps.
100%.
So I'll go in, I'll take my tractor and disc in there, and we'll work it up. Well, I got to bring it all the way back to the house, and I got to
trips,
and I got to hook my planter up, and then I got to turn around. I got to come back. I got to get the fertilizer cart. It's that.
That's challenging. 100%.
Because I'm by myself, which. I like doing it like that.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I love to do it. So it
but
doesn't
it is
matter.
a challenge.
It's a big challenge, and when you're doing all that, you also have to stay in that window, and you got to hustle and you got to get it done, or you might have a failed crop or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
brushing blinds, it's the same. I do have help on that. I can tell you.
Brushing blinds.
I have 20. Last year I had 28 duck blinds to brush.
Oh.
That's where you get a few buddies that get to earn a seat in a blind at least at some point,
That's right.
hopefully.
Yeah, I have a guy that.
God.
So my particular place I work for, they didn't have a full-time guy, but they had a guy that worked for Game and Fish that would come in and do private work or whatever you want to call it for them. And he's been a big help to me. He brings down guys when I need them. I don't get them. I can't have them full-time, but if we got big projects, say we're doing TSI work or we're hacking and squirting or we're doing anything timber related or brushing blinds or I need an extra tractor driver for a day just to get me by, he helps me. So I'm blessed with that.
That's
aspect.
big.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
big.
That's why I don't need a. But I can't get him all the time, so I try to do a lot of it myself. But
yeah, no, that was literally my biggest thing, and thankfully, about October, they hired 2 more guys to come help me. But if you don't have that, it's tough.
Because you're not motivated,
bro. You wake up and there's nobody there saying, "Hey, I'll meet you at the shop at 6." You're like, I can sleep another 30 minutes. It wakes up at 9 o'clock.
Absolutely.
And then the rain rolls in at 1. And
Absolutely.
You get nothing done. And that happens. That's human error. We could all say, no, I'd love that job. Okay, you do. Don't get me wrong. You love it. But there's so many days where you work 14 hours a day before. You miss supper because you came in at 11 o'clock. You don't want to get up at 6 to beat the rain the day after. But that was the biggest thing is, like you were saying, it would be nice. You disc it up and then you have somebody behind you with a planter.
Absolutely.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
And thankfully, later in the year, we ended up getting help. But in your situation, man, you got thousands of acres and you're the bush hogger.
Yep.
You're the weed eater. You're the roundup guy. I
take care of the whole lodge by myself too.
Oh, wow.
Mow, landscaping, sweeping. I do it all, man. I'm a do-all, really. And if you've got to have discipline with what I do.
Yeah.
If you don't have discipline, it doesn't work. Essentially.
No doubt.
So.
No doubt. Well, here is probably one of my favorite questions and one that we may spend a little bit of time on because I want us all to chime in. I know everybody kind of has their own say-so on this and people have different opinions, but that's what this is about. It's just throwing them all out there. So what do you think are some of the most important things to create good duck property? And this could be a whole episode literally in itself because I want Jerad to talk about it. I want Guy, Michael. I want everybody to chime in and tell our listeners, what do you believe as a duck hunter? Because you mentioned earlier too that every property is different, right? Like every property, of course, there's some common denominator things that every property has to have, right? Water, food, has to have that, but every property is different. And so let's start with Dr. Jerad down here, and I want us just to go around and talk about what do you think some of the most important things are to make a duck property thrive?
Yeah, well, I think you work with the things you can control. You can't control the duck. You can't control the weather. We just established that, right? But you can make sure that there's food on the table. There's good habitat that ducks want to be in. You can make sure, hopefully you can make sure there's water. At least some. Maybe not the whole thing, but hopefully you have access to water so you have food that's available. And then if you get ducks, you don't burn them out.
That's right.
Right.
It's
It's managing pressure, right?
Key
And I
point.
think those things right there are the big things. And you can unpack that into, we could spend days on both of those topics. But
100%.
Yeah.
But I think just at a high level, those are the things that I feel like, and that's from my waterfowl background and I've been lucky enough to be around a lot of very good land managers and that know what they do. And those are the things, like if you want to talk to somebody who's got ducks every year,
They've got those things.
Those are the things that they are focused on.
Yeah. And I do want to dissect that a little bit, and we have some time to talk about this. Yeah. We're going to come back to you, though, Dr. Jerad, because I want to talk about that last point, pressure.
Yes.
I do want to dive into that. But, Guy, what do you think?
To me, we could have 10 different people and their theory or their perspective of being successful may be different, so it just depends what you have. Like you said, not everybody has 3,000 acres, so
Correct.
Just controlling what you can control. A lot of guys get I don't know how to say this, but a lot of guys think they can't do something with their property because they don't have the resource or whatever. But, I would just say, like, I tell a lot of people, man, there's all kind of agencies that will help you set your properties up. If you don't know anything, get educated on it, research and reach out to people that'll help you. And, there's so many different aspects of it that could benefit the farm in the long run, so.
AGFC, the private lands biologists, have great things. They also have equipment, I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to get. That's my point. Yeah.
So if you're in that area, that same area where you're at, or, that's kind of close to where I'm from and what I'm familiar with, there are resources.
Reach out.
So
that's a big deal.
I take care of,
great
I've
point.
told y'all about it, but I take care of another guy's place too. And, we had AGFC come in and write us a complete plan, not saying we needed it, but they wrote us a complete plan, step by step, of what they think this farm we could do with this farm.
Wow.
And it was actually really good. And these guys are educated, just like, it's just,
they know what they're
so many
about.
Resources, so when you say, what makes a good duck property, it differs from people to people,
sure.
but, just, try to dissect your farm and see, get some opinions on it. What, different people, don't just rely on yourself, because, you can beat a dead horse 10 different ways. But anyway, so.
No doubt.
Yep.
Michael?
Well, I don't want to beat a dead horse too. Diversity, I would say, is probably your biggest. If you've got, and you can make it work in the right area, I'll say that's probably the biggest thing. You can build a 5,000 acre green tree reservoir in McGee, Mississippi. You're going to shoot nothing but wood duck. But
absolutely.
But being able to have your green tree, rest area, buckbrush, stuff like that, man, I think that holds and helps so much on ducks, because it's hard on the guy that's got 100 acres and he wants to hunt 3 days a week. You know what I mean?
That's a great point, that habitat complex. And one of the things I want to mention, if you only have 40 acres or 80 acres, and if you've got that 40 or 80 acres in a good area, look on Google Maps. Figure out what the limiting habitat is for a duck.
That's a good point.
If you're surrounded by 4,000 acres of rice, putting 40 acres of rice in there is not going to make you very competitive.
That's right.
But if you put a moist soil impoundment in, or if you let that thing go back to buckbrush and scrub, guess what?
They're gonna
it's going to be game on. You've got something that's different that's going to pull all those ducks to that one
diversity.
Spot, right? It's that diversity.
Yeah.
It's what's that limiting resource, right, in that area. So something to think about. And that's how you get away with small pieces of property
100%.
and make those better. And that's a great point.
And if you look at all your successful, like you said, that term can be
it's broad.
It is.
Broad.
It is. But generally speaking, your successful land management places that are managed by someone have that diversity.
Yes.
They have all what you just talked about. For example, we did some banding not long ago at Five Oaks, and you look at Five Oaks, and it's unbelievable. That's all the diversity.
It's a mecca.
It is.
It is. So, okay, now I want to talk about pressure, right? I want to talk about, because I feel like that is one of the most important things on managing land is pressure. One of the most important things, like Michael mentioned, if you've got 100 acres and you're hunting 3 days a week, 4 days a week, you're going to shoot those birds out of there, and they can't rest, and they can't. And so I want us to discuss a little bit about pressure and how to manage that. And I know that that's very complex too, but what are just kind of some practices, all of us are duck hunters, that you've either implied on the places that you hunt, that you've seen other people, put out as a rule at their lodge, at their camp, whatever it is. What are some things that you've kind of seen that help with that pressure side of things?
You can go to me. Okay.
That's
no. I've got a couple. I've got a couple of things here. Number one, if you have ducks on a property, don't shoot the center of the eggs every day.
Don't get in the middle of them.
You need a nest egg. The most attractive thing to a migrating duck is other ducks. Yeah. So you want to keep ducks on your property. Yeah, you could go in and have a bang up hunt. But guess what? You can have one bang up hunt. Or you can hunt the edge of that and you can shoot ducks for 3-4 weeks, right?
Absolutely.
And have consistency. No, you're not going to have a barn burner probably. But you're going to hold some ducks in the area. You get a good flight pattern, a good migration day. You're going to get more ducks in the area. So that's one, holding ducks. And then the second aspect of that, from what I've learned, because I helped my dad's former duck club we had for 30 years on Cache River. It was a 300-acre farm. That club, you could hammer it 3 days a week. You could hunt the X 3 days a week.
Wow.
Just under them. You were under them.
We smoked them. If you hunted Saturday, you had a bang up hunt. Sunday, we'd shoot half to 3/4. Monday, you're down to maybe a quarter of what you shot Saturday. And then you had to let them rest for 4 days.
Yep.
And then you could rinse and repeat. And on 400 or 350 acres, we hunted one hole.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
And let them work
you
around
speak
it.
to Five Oaks and all that. They have schedules of like how they do it. So, just, I'm not speaking for them or anybody, but like I've been around a club that they only hunt Saturday, Sunday, and they rest 4 days a week, no matter what, no matter who's coming in, anything. You've got to implement. You've got to have some policy or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
To you've got to
Guidelines.
figure it out too. It's not just let's do this, but you got to figure out what them ducks are doing, what they want essentially. So like, y'all seen our stuff over there by the sanctuary and all that.
Yeah.
You can hunt that probably once a week and then you go in there the next day, or you hunt it once and go in there the next day and it's just as full as it was.
Yeah.
But if you let them rest for 2 or 3 days, you can go in there and hunt them again.
We also, so the place Michael was a head land manager at, whenever I went and played Balt UM too, I had the opportunity to go and help out a little bit, kind of how he talked about, and also get to hunt there some. And one of the things that this place implemented was, I kid you not, I think I told this story on one of the former podcast episodes. I kid you not though, I have been on a hunt where we were one duck shy
We had 6
of a limit.
One shy, 6 limits.
One duck shy, and it hit 9 a.m. And he looked at us and said, unload your gun. One duck shy. Did not care. Didn't care if you were working a bird. Once it hit at 9 o'clock, they said, get your stuff. Let's get out of here. Let the ducks get back in here, rest.
And this is a 700-acre property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is how serious, like Guy said, the Friday and Saturday deal, that's how serious they were at 9 o'clock.
A lot of famous
more.
duck clubs that run a very
Just
similar
like
9
that.
o'clock rule, and they're strict to it. Very strict. Some of them also limit to days per week as well. I mean, so.
And another thing with this pressure is, and this is something else that Michael and them implemented, and I'll let you talk a little bit about it, but no mud motors.
No. You couldn't get over idle, which some of this stuff, is kind of that's cliche. You look at some Instagram TikTokers. I mean, they're on pad with 9 people going in, and they still shoot 15 limits. You know what I mean? But like, it was if you went in deer hunting in the evenings, you walked. You did not go in there unless you killed something with a 4-wheeler or anything like that. But at the same time, I mean, does that help? I honestly do think it helps, and I do. And I think it makes a big difference. I do, because you're not bumping these birds. A lot of people don't realize they get comfortable. Like at this place we're talking about, after 9 o'clock, you could be out there packing up the trucks and stuff, getting ready to move locations, and you just see ducks dumping off this sanctuary, and they just hang out in the woods. Well, then, I mean, that's the downfall of some areas. I mean, they just get pounded. They'll hunt in the morning, hunt in the evening. You can be in a jam up place and burn it out.
Well, and that's one of the biggest issues with public land, especially like in Arkansas, is that they're getting run. There's disturbance. The disturbance is not just a gunshot,
correct?
Right? It's
100%.
it's
Mud
whatever
motors,
moves
boats.
them, and mud motors get a lot of rap. I've heard some real loud 2-strokes.
I was about to say,
I mean, it's everything.
I was about to say, man,
So-
I'll be running up the river and somebody come by me going 65 miles an hour, and I can't even hear my
Sounds
motor.
like
Yeah.
Jeff Gordon
So-
on the last lap of Talladega.
So I think
Ricky
it's,
Bobby.
a lot of it is, yes, the equipment's loud, but it's people, right?
It
It's
is,
some
you're
type
right.
of people,
100%.
whether it's or you're running a Can-Am through a field or an Argo. They're not quiet either. But if you're disturbing ducks, if you're making them move and you're getting them up, they're probably not going to come back.
Mhm.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so paying attention to that. And some of the better places I've ever hunted, they're boat lanes and all that stuff. Some of them would allow bud butters, some would do whatnot, but the boat lanes always go around the edge. They never go through the middle of the farm.
Yeah.
Or the GTR or whatever. Never goes through the middle. You could run the edge and then they'd idle in to a hole, right? And so you're never putting that heavy disturbance in the center of where you're trying to get ducks to go.
Look at, I'm not going to name the WMA, but that was crazy because
insane.
You couldn't beat them out of there. And like we said, I said, if you allowed boats in here, it would not be like this.
Dude. Yeah. You could. There was people up there.
I know where y'all were at.
There was people,
come on now.
There was people there, man, that I'm like, I don't even
almost
know.
brought up another story, but I won't.
I don't even know.
We're about to give our secrets away to all our listeners.
I'm doing all that now. Come on.
I don't even know if some of these people had duck calls, and they were smoking ducks.
It looked like the old days, man. It
really did.
Yeah.
But at the same time, man, you can get thick in them up at the white and do the same thing, and you'll have 12 lights around you at daylight and do the same thing. Yeah. But, it's whenever those 3 sanctuaries right there are just holding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you what was one of the neatest and craziest, and like Michael said a second ago too, is like, I will never knock anything somebody says that they do on their property that they helps with ducks. Like, I will never knock it. But one of the craziest things is I know somebody that they run this operation, and once you get in your either side-by-side boat, whatever it is you're going out into the field or woods or anything that you're hunting, you cannot turn on a light whatsoever. No light bar, no headlight, no phone light, no light, 0 light.
You better know where you go.
There's not there.
Wow. And I only know one place like that. But I'm talking about once you put in gear where you're going, all lights are off.
And that habitat's going to depend, right? If you've got wide open fields, right?
And that's the thing is, like, who knows if that
different.
It works or not? But hey, to each their own. And if you
how
think
bad
that
the birds want in there.
And I honestly think, like God's honest truth, now day and age, the hunter makes as much difference as the property. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot of, now I'm not saying like if you just got this mecca place, but I'm saying like the guy taking the people now matters a whole lot, because man, a lot of these birds are getting shot at everywhere, and they've heard everything.
Tactics.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
Because, if I don't know Guy's place and you've been hunting your place for 8 years, you know how they act, what they like, what they don't like. I can go hunt your place and I may not kill 5 ducks on it, and you go in there and kill 10 limits. Like, you know what I mean? I think knowing the area.
That knowledge,
Yes.
It is super. And that takes time. There's a point I was going to say earlier, when I started, it took me 2 years to learn how the ducks use the property, and then you're changing the variables with what you do every day, in the summers. And it's like, it takes several years to learn the property.
Yeah.
And just to see what they want. And like, we can go back to diversity. Like, one thing I really like to do is in my moist soil units, I'll do moist soil and then do some strips of rice or whatever I can keep the cleanest without, killing it all with herbicide or whatever. And we can point on that too. But, it's just, there's so many variables to all that. So,
yeah, no doubt. Well, this has been such a fun episode. Just being able to sit back, talk ducks, talk land, talk dirt. It's been awesome. I've enjoyed it so much. Dr. Jerad, thank you so much. Guy, thank you for driving over from Arkansas. Michael, driving up from Mississippi. Actually rode with me up here, so I don't count.
We got a free ride.
I picked him up off the side of the
Mississippi
road.
boys, Arkansas boys. You know what they say about them Mississippi boys.
Yeah. Hey, we got some Arkansas blood in us. We were Arkansas residents for a little while.
For sure.
But no, well, thank y'all all so much for taking time out of your day. Can't thank you. Also, our podcast producer, Mr. Chris Isaac, for making all this go so smoothly. And also, thank you to our podcast listeners. Thank you all so much, and God bless.
Thank you for listening to the DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing, Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. Whether you're winding down with your best friend or celebrating with your favorite crew, Bird Dog brings award-winning flavor to every moment. Enjoy responsibly. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show and visit ducks.org/DU podcast. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.